Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sports Time HQ. I am your host, Rando. Joining me today is not my co host, Keith, but we do have a special guest star here. It is special guest star from NFL Network. He's a fantasy analyst. It is Michael F. Florio. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Always a pleasure when we get to catch up and talk a little ball. So I'm excited to be on this podcast today. And I thought it was going to be a slow week in the NFL world. That was a big mistake on my part.
Yes, for sure. We're going to get right into it. I mean, big trade today. Carson Wentz. He gets traded from the Colts to the Washington Commanders. What is your thoughts and what is your take on that? Did Washington win that trade?
I guess it depends on who you ask. I think the Colts are the losers here, primarily because a year ago they gave up a first round pick, and today they got 2 second-round picks for him. So, yeah, and they didn't make the playoffs in the 1 year they had him. So, I think it's hard to come away and say the Colts are the real winners here. Um, Washington, I think this is a disappointment if you were expecting them to go out and make a big move, which it sounds like they were. I mean, a week ago we heard that they called and asked about Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, which we knew obviously weren't going to happen. But then we hear that they were in on Russ. They were apparently trying to get Rodgers. So to come away with Carson Wentz is that's far from what they were hoping to do, but I still do think Carson Wentz is an upgrade from Taylor Heineke, who's a really cool dude. Got to speak with him at Radio Row this year. But just talent-wise, I think Wentz is an upgrade there. Heineke now becomes a high-level backup quarterback, I would say. And for me, the biggest thing here is that Carson Wentz is a better deep ball thrower than Taylor Heineke has been in his career. All the numbers say so. So while he's middle of the pack, I think this actually does help Terry McLaurin a little bit, but still not quite to the level that we were hoping it would.
Yeah, so are we seeing McLaurin? Is he still not going to be that wide receiver one that we're hoping for?
I I cannot rank him as that. And last year I was on board with thinking he could take that next step. I thought he was quarterback proof. But what we saw is he's not. Not many wide receivers are. He could still give you wide receiver 2 production. Uh, and it's going to come with a lot of wide receiver 1 weeks, but then there's also going to be a lot of those down weeks. I don't expect a whole lot to change with Terry McLaurin. I think he's a receiver that'll finish somewhere between like wide receiver 15 and like 22, 24, definitely 24, because I think he's a wide receiver 2 for sure. But I think it's going to be a lot of spike weeks and a lot of dud weeks, and that's just kind of who I think he's going to be until he gets a big quarterback upgrade. I don't think Wentz is that guy for him.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think McLaurin will kind of be in the 19 to 23 range, roughly on the finish of the season. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not he'll be able to do anything, and whether or not does Pittman take a fall in this for fantasy value?
I'm sorry?
Does Michael Pittman? So obviously, right now we have Sam Ellinger as the starting quarterback, technically for the Colts. Season were to start. Do you think the Colts draft a quarterback? Obviously, they don't really have a first. Do you think they sign a free agent like maybe, I don't know, James Winston, maybe get Garoppolo? Or do they trade for another quarterback, maybe someone who definitely is not getting the starting job now because Aaron Rodgers just signed a 4-year deal? That's Jordan Love.
Jordan Love is an interesting name. I actually haven't heard a lot of people float that one out there. A second round pick. They did just, pick swap with Washington to improve that second round pick of theirs a little bit. Maybe they send that second for a Jordan Love. I keep thinking that they're going to be in on Jimmy G. I know they'll have to trade to get him from the Niners, but they have now, after getting rid of Carson Wentz's contract, they have more cap room than any team in the NFL, so they can absorb that contract of Jimmy G's. Although I'll go on record right now saying I would rather pay Jameis Winston for a year or two, because I don't think it's going to cost a whole lot more of that, something like 10, 15 million a year, than give Jimmy G, trade for him and pay him what he is making. But reports literally right away after they traded him was like, no, they are back in on Jimmy G now. So I expect them to go after him. I think he's their plan A, but if that fails, if they don't get Winston, because he's right now tied to the Saints, and there's a lot of other teams that could use his services, we're talking about maybe like Mitch Trubisky or Marcus Mariota. So I'm not ready to fully say yet that Michael Pittman Jr.'s value takes a hit, because I think if it's like someone like Jimmy G who they get, then I think it's kind of a lateral move, which I put it out on Twitter today. I think going from Taylor Heineke to Carson Wentz is more of an upgrade than going from Carson Wentz to Jimmy G. So I don't fully get this thinking by the Colts brass. But if it's Jimmy G, like I think Pittman will be similar to what he was last year. But if it's Jordan Love or Trubisky or Mariota or perhaps none of those guys and it's someone worse, then I think his value does take a hit, because Carson Wentz isn't great by any stretch, but Carson Wentz is better than some of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, 100% there. I was never really on the Pittman train until all of a sudden this year he did decide to blow up. But you did put in a really good question out on Twitter earlier today. If Carson Wentz and the Colts managed to beat the Jaguars in Week 18, does Carson Wentz get traded? I want to ask you that question. Do you think he would have got traded?
No. I think if they make the playoffs and they lose, we don't know who they necessarily would have exactly played in that scenario, because seeding was very much so up for grabs that week. But I think if they lost to the Chiefs or the Bills or someone like that, it'd be like, okay, we lost to a better team, and this was exactly where we were a year ago. We thought maybe Wentz could get us over. He got us to the playoffs, though, in a weird year where stuff did go wrong for the Colts. But yeah, I think that game decided everything. Like, the Jaguars fans showed up in clown costumes and they still beat the Colts. And on that tweet, I said, who would have thought just 2 months later the Jaguars would be in a better spot than the Colts? And I've gotten some flack from that, but I'm very bullish on the Jaguars next year. I think they can easily be one of, if not the most improved team in the NFL. I'm still high on Lawrence, and I think Peterson's a good acquisition there. They got cap space, they got draft capital. So I don't think the gap is I think the Colts roster is more talented, but I mean, it all depends on who's quarterback in them. These two teams could be very similar heading into the season.
Yes, we've definitely seen quarterbacks really being a big factor, especially in this week with Russell Wilson. We already know Russell Wilson got traded to the Broncos. Seahawks definitely got a big haul on that. But Deshaun Watson still has no team technically, because the Texans don't plan on playing him. And they've been called for a bunch of different offers, including the Panthers, including the Seahawks. Seahawks have reportedly asking maybe they take Watson. This is according to Pro Football Talk, Aaron Wilson. But Michael, we were talking before the show, and you were saying maybe the Steelers could be interested as well.
Yeah, a report came out today that if all goes well with the legal issues on Deshaun Watson, and who knows how that is going to play out. That is the biggest, question mark in football right now. But they're saying if all goes well with that, Pittsburgh will be heavily involved in trying to get Deshaun Watson. And if Pittsburgh gets Deshaun Watson, and I know there's punishment from the league that still has to come out and stuff, I'm not going to comment on any of that stuff because I don't know what it is yet. But all I know is if Pittsburgh has Deshaun Watson, they are right there with the AFC's already loaded with very talented teams and quarterbacks. He's right there with any quarterback in the AFC, and their roster is as well. So it would be another Super Bowl contender in the AFC. And I mean, if that was to happen, Aaron Rodgers looks even smarter for staying in the NFC.
For 100%. Now, who would you say that you would want Watson to go to if he were traded? The Panthers, the Seahawks, or the Steelers?
Anyone but the Seahawks. Because I don't want him to become what Russell Wilson has been. And the thing, I tweeted this out yesterday, but the reason I'm bullish on Russell Wilson now, first of all, I think too many people soured on him last year. It was his first time ever in his career getting hurt. His first time in 9 years not finishing as a top 10 fantasy quarterback. But he's now on a team that is going to have a quicker pace of play. They're probably going to throw the ball more. Pete Carroll would always run a slow-paced offense that would try to establish the run, ask Russell Wilson to scramble around because they never invested in the offensive line, throw deep balls all game, and then in the fourth quarter play hero ball. I do not want to see that happen to more talented quarterbacks. But I think if you put Watson on Pittsburgh, I think they're a Super Bowl contender. Carolina has a little bit more work to do than Pittsburgh would, but for fantasy, I mean, they have DJ Moore, who we all keep waiting to get a good quarterback to see what he truly can be. They have Robbie Anderson, who as of now is still on the roster. Terrace Marshall Jr. is a wide receiver that I was very high on in coming into the draft last season. So they have both of those teams are teams that have a lot of talented receivers and playmakers around them, which would be a big boost for fantasy if he goes there. Again, just got to see how all of these many legal issues that he has plays out.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see where current Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson will go. But second year player now going into the 2022 season, second year player Davis Mills, he's really stepped up in that starting role. And his last 5 games, he averaged 17.36 points. He passed for 250 plus yards, 3 plus touchdowns in 3 of the last 5 games. He had a 9-2 touchdown interception rate. If he were to have kept that average for all 17 games he would have played, he would have finished as QB 12. He is my fantasy breakout quarterback of the second year for all rookies.
Really?
Yes.
That is bold because there's at least 3 rookie quarterback, well, soon to be second year quarterbacks now that I expect really big things out of. And
I do for sure. I think Davis Mills is my bold one, but I do have someone else in mind.
I give you credit because as of right now, my thinking with Davis Mills is better real life quarterback than fantasy. He doesn't run a whole lot. Everything you said is true. He played really well down the end. I think he definitely earned this year to be their starter, especially because they're not going to be a very competitive team. And next year's quarterback class, both free agency and draft class, figures to be better. So give Davis Mills a year to see what you have in him. But my biggest concern is that they don't have a ton of talent around him. And they just hired Lovie Smith as their head coach. And if history shows us anything, it's that Lovie Smith is going to try to ground and pound and rely on his defense. So I think Davis Mills is a better real life quarterback than he got credit for last year. But I will come on this show and give you all the credit in the world if he's a QB1 or even close to one next year, because that's a bold call. I like it.
It is a bold call. I really don't see him being a QB1, but he could definitely have QB2 potential for sure. Especially in Dynasty. I mean, looking at the stat that I said he would have finished as QB12 if he stayed that average. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. So I'm really in Dynasty anyways. I'm trying to buy Davis Mills because not many people are high like this and know these kind of stats. Then, I mean, you and I both now. So I think Davis Mills really is my bold prediction quarterback for the second year.
Go out and get him for cheap too, because he's, like you said, it's not going to cost you a whole lot.
3rd round rookie pick, 2 third-round rookie picks. I mean, I'm fine with that.
Especially this year in a class like this.
Yeah, 100%. Who's your guy? Who's your quarterback anyways? Do you have a quarterback in mind?
So my top one is Trey Lance, but everyone loves Trey Lance, and I like Justin Fields a lot as well. I could talk about both of those guys for a while, but I'm going to go with the one that I ranked highest last year. I had him as my number 1 quarterback. Everyone had him as the number 1 quarterback. Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is a better runner than he gets credit for, especially near the line of scrimmage. That was the one, especially near the goal line. That was the one thing I liked that Urban Meyer, and it might have actually been after Urban Meyer was let go. I don't necessarily remember, but in the last month or so of the season, he was running a little bit more, especially near pay dirt. He scored a touchdown. There was one week where he got stuffed twice at the 1. Don't love to see that, but you love to see the opportunity. I also think I watched every single snap of his from his final year in Clemson, and I came away super impressed with him as a runner and just with all of the arm talent he has. There's not a throw that this guy can't make. He was just put in an all-time bad situation. Like Urban Meyer, week 1, didn't even know who he was going to face. Like you can't make that up. And we know it just got worse and worse and worse as the year went on. And not only was it all the off the field stuff that Trevor Lawrence had to talk about and answer to, it was also the lack of preparation, the taking James Robinson off the field way too much, where Trevor Lawrence was having to publicly plead, get this best playmaker on the field more. But you add in the fact that they'll have Travis Etienne this year, which they didn't have. They'll have hopefully James Robinson back. I expect them to go out and sign or draft a new wide receiver 1. They have a lot of cap space. They have a lot of draft capital. They kept their offensive lineman using the franchise tag to do so. And more than anything, Doug Peterson, right? Doug Peterson is a stabilizing presence. He always runs an offense that's going to throw the ball 60% or more of the time. So I love that. And quarterbacks have just performed. Like Carson Wentz's MVP season was under Doug Peterson. He got Nick Foles to win a Super Bowl. He had Jalen Hurts looking really good before he was let go too. So I'm excited for a lot of second-year quarterbacks, but I just wanted this opportunity to kind of talk up Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Nick Foles did end up beating my Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Uh,
So that was
I thought
unfortunate.
you won more than enough.
Yeah, that's true. But your Bills, I will admit, really got screwed in the Chiefs game.
I've never had a range of emotions like I did in that game. Like legitimately when they scored with 13 seconds left, I was like yelling and running around. I was planning on flying to Buffalo the next week to go to the game, and then the rest of it is kind of a blur, and that's probably for good reason.
Yeah, and I found it so interesting of a stat. I don't know if you saw the stat that Patrick Mahomes won in overtime in 13 seconds, and the game he lost to the Bengals in overtime, he threw an interception 13 seconds into overtime.
Hey, Patrick Mahomes himself came out and he was like, I've been on that end of it, because when he lost, up until he lost to the Bengals, his only playoff loss had been a game where he didn't touch the ball in overtime. I mean, not Super Bowl loss, had been when he didn't touch the ball in overtime against Tom Brady. So yeah, I think we need to change that rule at least for the playoffs.
I 100% agree with that, especially if playoffs. Maybe regular season, sure, if you really want to keep it, but playoffs for sure, definitely not. But I agree with you with Trevor Lawrence. I was kind of iffy on him because I don't know if you saw the stats. Well, 2% touchdown rate last season, which yeah, awful. But again, Trevor Lawrence, he's a rookie quarterbacks with Urban Meyer there. I mean, clearly doesn't look so good. Doug Peterson, though, he is coming, like he's won a Super Bowl. So he has that potential to bring these Jaguars and really turn them around. And I agree with you with the Colts being less good than the Jaguars. The Jaguars are right now better than the Colts. And I really would like to see the Jaguars really step up their game. And DJ Chark, hopefully he comes back and stays healthy, and maybe they re-sign someone else, or sign someone else in free agency for a weapon. You have ETN, which also I don't agree with that. Don't agree with them drafting ETN in the draft when they had James Robinson. Don't agree with that. But ETN and Robinson 1-2 punch. Hopefully Robinson can come back from a torn Achilles, which is very hard to come back from for running backs. But ETN, hopefully he can come back. He's had the longest time for really people with injuries, longest time to really recover. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not he can progress next season for sure.
Yeah, so, and I agree with everything you said there. The only thing I'm throwing last year completely, like if it was like he had just like Matt Nagy, and it's like for Justin Fields, we're like, all right, Matt Nagy was a bad play caller. I think Justin Fields could get better. If Trevor Lawrence did what he did with a coach like that, I'd understand if people were a little bit more skeptical. But like, I don't know how we value anything that happened in Jacksonville last year, really, because it was a train wreck that was off the rails before the season even started. He didn't give Trevor Lawrence all of the preseason snaps and then traded Gardner Minshew. I mean, I forgot that happened until right now. Like, so much has happened in that 1 year. It's just basically a lost year in my opinion.
Yeah, Jaguars really had a lost year. I really didn't like the fact that they traded Minshew Magic. He shouldn't have been traded. I would have liked him as a backup quarterback there, but
I think the Eagles should be shopping him now because teams need quarterbacks now more than they did a year ago.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, maybe does Hurts? Quick question: does Hurts stay in Philadelphia?
Yes. Like, is Hurts the starter beyond 2022? That I can't say, but like, there's a group of fantasy Twitter people out there who have it in their head that like Jalen Hurts is this awful quarterback, and that is not the case. Is he a franchise quarterback? I'm not sold on that, but I mean, he did lead them to the playoffs last year. I know he had an easy schedule, but he beat who he's supposed to beat. And there's this narrative that like he was nearly benched. No, he wasn't. One beat reporter came out and said, hey, in week 8, I think it was, like, if he's still struggling like this in week 12, week 14, do we see the switch to Gardner Minshew then? And then he went on a hot streak where he led them to the playoffs. He was not almost benched last season.
No, I was really shocked when I heard that Hurts wouldn't be a future franchise quarterback, at least next year's starter. I mean, I really think Hurts didn't do so bad than people think. So I really expect Hurts to be definitely a starter in 2022. 2023, like you said, I'm still not sure on that. But for rookie quarterbacks overall, Mac Jones was the leading quarterback for fantasy. Of course, my boy Mac Jones. I don't see him as a fantasy quarterback though for the future. I just am not fully committed to him yet for fantasy. Pro wise, he's amazing, but fantasy wise, I'm kind of iffy on him. What's your thoughts on him?
Same. Like for me, he's of the second year quarterbacks, he's fourth at best. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
like him and Davis Mills battling out for that because Mac Jones gives you nothing with his legs. He's not a threat to run at all. Plus, the Patriots are a team that they're going to run the ball a good amount with their running backs. They're going to look to control the game with their defense. And so it's kind of why like Tom Brady's fantasy became a much better fantasy asset once he left New England. It's just the system that they operate in there. It's not the best suited for fantasy because Bill Belichick does not care at all about our fantasy teams. He cares about wins and losses, and he gets lots of wins, but it doesn't always lead to a bunch of fantasy production.
No, I don't think Bill Belichick plays fantasy. Don't think so for sure. We have a question from Albert. Where do you rank Javonte Williams next season? That is something that will move right into the running backs. And he finished RB17. Williams is kind of expected to take that starting role over Melvin Gordon if Melvin Gordon were to resign. Right now, Melvin Gordon is technically a free agent, and they have been talks with the GM that he will be coming back. What's your thoughts whether or not Melvin Gordon comes back, and where do you rank Williams?
So I did my early 2022 running back top 12 running back rankings last week, and I had Javonte Williams as my RB8. And I know some people might say that that is very high. It's gonna fluctuate based on whatever Melvin Gordon does. Because if Melvin Gordon leaves and he is the lead runner now on this Broncos offense that just added Russell Wilson, and I think Russell Wilson's the best deep ball thrower in football. That's going to open up a lot of space near the line of scrimmage. Javonte Williams is already the best at forcing missed tackles in the league. Good luck wrapping him up when you also got to put defenders back deep to prevent, the deep ball from Judy and Sutton and those guys. So I think Javonte Williams legitimately, if Melvin Gordon leaves, is in play to fit. I wouldn't draft him first overall, but I think he's very much so in play to finish as the overall RB1. I think also he would be the best case to be this year's Jonathan Taylor, like a player who would go late first, early second in some drafts and finishes the top running back in fantasy. But if Melvin Gordon comes back, and a lot obviously could happen here because the Broncos do lose out on some cap space now bringing in Russ, but Melvin Gordon has said that he wants to return to Denver. He likes it there. He also played a year of college ball with Russell Wilson. So if he was to sign a team-friendly deal and end up there, he's more than just a complimentary back. And even if Javonte Williams is the lead runner, we could be seeing close to a 50-50 split like we did just this past year. So then I think Javonte Williams becomes more of a high-end RB2, and I would be fearful that fantasy Twitter would continue to overhype this guy, make him a first-round pick, and I would be out on Javonte Williams if that's the case. I love his talent, but I think so much of it right now hinges on if Melvin Gordon returns or not.
Yeah, if Gordon does not return, Javonte Williams is 100% a top 10 running back next season. Now, if Gordon ends up coming back, I kind of give him, I think Williams will do better than what he finished at RB 17, but I not so much higher, maybe 14 to 15, maybe 16. But I really don't see him getting a top 10 with Gordon there. But it will be interesting to see whether or not Williams will have the starting role and if Gordon doesn't come back, which would be fantastic. Question for you, though. In Dynasty, are you trading a first overall pick in the rookie draft and the second overall pick for Williams if Gordon doesn't come back?
A first and the first two picks of the draft?
Yes.
I don't know. That's a steep price to pay. Like that could be like, if it's super flex, that could be like Brees Hall and Malik Willis or Brees Hall and one of those wide receivers. So I would want to pay a little bit less, but I would definitely give up, like if you said the first overall, like, yeah, I would give that up plus something more. I don't know if I would give up the first and second overall picks though.
Yeah, I was talking to Dave from Dynasty Dorks and co-host Keith, and we were talking about where we would trade for him, and most of them said maybe like a first overall pick and maybe like the 1.10 plus a wide receiver, like maybe like Darnell Mooney type.
I'm okay with that because again, I think if Melvin Gordon signs anywhere but Denver, and they just bring in like a complimentary back, or maybe they just roll it out with Mike Boone as the backup, like Javonte Williams is in play to finish, I think, as the RB1. Again, I wouldn't rank him as that, but he would be like Jonathan Taylor was last year, a top 10 running back or top 12 running back off the board that goes late first, sometimes early second, and has a really good chance of being the number one running back.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not Williams can do that. Now, going on to maybe someone that you already mentioned, Travis Etienne. He is my running back for breaking out this season. Again, he is coming off an injury, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not he can really progress and not have any setbacks, because that is something huge to see whether or not he'll have setbacks. But Etienne has never had an injury prior to this. He's been completely healthy, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not he'll come off that Liz Frank injury. But overall, I mean, if this team with Doug Peterson, this team can be really good, like you said.
Yeah, I think so too. The only concern I have there is James Robinson and the fact that Peterson likes to use two running backs, and he's got two here, but Travis Etienne should be the pass catcher one. I think he's also the more explosive one, and who knows when or how James Robinson is gonna look when he returns from this injury.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Now, was there any other running backs that you thought could possibly break out?
I can't give up on Michael Carter, and I remember last year I got some flack after the draft when I liked him a lot more than Trey Sermon, and that was the unpopular opinion on fantasy Twitter. Look how much a year changes things when Trey Sermon couldn't even see the field
I
ahead of
know.
JaMychal Hasty. But the reason I like Michael Carter so much is if you look from weeks 4 through 11, early on in the year, the Jets were doing that weird thing teams do where they're like, we know you're our best player at the position, but you got to earn your reps. So once he really started to get more playing time in week 4 through week 11, which is when after that he suffered a high ankle sprain. I don't care what happened after that. High ankle sprains are season ruiners, especially that late in the season. But in that, what was that 7-week span, Carter averaged nearly 16 fantasy points per game on over 16 touches per game. A little bit inflated by all of those Mike White dump offs, but watching Michael Carter, I was impressed. He looked the part of a runner. He looked the part of a pass catcher. And we all love Javonte Williams for the missed tackles that he forced. Michael Carter did a lot well. In fact, he had the 6th best missed tackles forced per attempt by running backs with at least 100 touches since 2014. So while Javonte Williams gets all the love out of that UNC backfield, Michael Carter, I think, is a very talented back in his own right. I expect him to be the lead runner for the Jets this year, who could vastly improve their offensive line as well, which would only help.
Yeah, if they can really improve that offensive line, it'll be really helpful for them. But I was really disappointed of Michael Carter, what he did in his rookie season. He really had that starting role, if you really think about it there. And not even being able to pass 750 rushing yards. I mean, he totaled 900 overall yards, but he's got to definitely break out here. If he doesn't break out this season, it might be questions whether or not Carter is the future running back in New York.
Hey, I love the fact that you get a discount on him too. You could get him as your low end RB2 or a high end RB3. At that price, I'm going to take a shot on his talent.
Yeah, I'd take the risk. Quick honorable mention that I do want to mention is Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson, he was a rookie, of course, last year, and he finished as the RB44. Now, Damian Harris is still under contract for one more season, but rookies with multiple games of 100 plus yards rushing and 2+ touchdowns, guess who? Todd Gurley, Zeke, Jacobs, Jeremy Hill, Jonathan Taylor. Ramondre Stevenson might be the real deal here, and I think Damian Harris could be not let go, but could walk in free agency after this season.
Yeah, Stevenson is a beast, and we saw. I know he disappointed the one time where Damian Harris got hurt, but we saw other times when he got a larger workload where Stevenson really took advantage. I wouldn't want to tackle that guy in an open field. He's huge. I think he gets typecasted as being like a big, run between the tackler, bruising type of running back, but he has a second gear that he is some explosiveness that I think some people overlook a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And it'd be something to see whether or not Harris does stay, because that will definitely increase the value if Harris leaves. A
Yeah.
little, a little quick question from the fans from Q. Keep a question: if Watson goes to Pittsburgh, like you were mentioning, do you keep Waddle for a 10th or Deontay for a 5th?
Oh, that's tough, but I would still go with Jalen Waddle. Like I have Jalen Waddle ranked higher right now. He's my wide receiver 8. I think Deontay Johnson is 10. That might flip if that trade was to occur, but you get a 5-round discount on Jalen Waddle, who I am super excited for. He showed us last year he could ball at a very high level, and now he gets Mike McDaniel, who just made Deebo Samuel into Deebo Samuel. Now, I'm not saying Jalen Waddle is going to be Deebo Samuel, but Mike McDaniel has said all the right things when it comes to Jalen Waddle, and I am very bullish on him heading into next season.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I would keep Waddle for a 10th for sure. Um, I mean, wide receiver coach Wes Welker, former Patriots wide receiver, he said he compared Waddle to almost like a quotes Tyreek Hill ish. So it'd be intriguing to see whether or not Waddle will really end up being that Tyreek Hill ish of a player. I mean, last season I wasn't high on Waddle. I was completely off on Waddle because of his injuries in the past. Maybe it might have been some bias because I was really trying to get Lynn Bowden as my breakout player. So it'd be interesting. I managed to get Adam Rank on board. That is one thing.
Ooh, there we go. I can't wait to hear him talking him up all August now.
No, that was last season. He was talking about last
Oh,
season. This season, I don't think so. I think we're both off on Bowden. But
gotcha.
anyways, let's go on to our wide receiver breakouts. And it might be just me, but I think I'm high on the Texans this year. I don't know why, but I really think Nico Collins. He had 4+ targets last 5 games, multiple catches last 5 games. His last 3 games, 8 receptions, 135 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Cooks is coming into his final year contract. So it'll be intriguing to see whether or not Nico Collins can step up with that role. And also, Chris Conley and Danny Amendola both are free agents this season. Whether or not they re-sign is still in question, but that counts for 74 targets. So 74 of those targets could easily be distributed to either Nico Collins, Brandon Cooks, Brevin Jordan. I mean, I really think Nico Collins has a really good shot and opportunity to really break out this season.
I like that call. I liked Nico Collins coming out of college. He was actually my pick last year to lead this Texans team in receiving touchdowns. That didn't happen, but he flashed at times. I think it was more just the lack of usage and stuff for him. But also, you said Cooks is on the last year of his contract. No wide receiver gets traded more than Brandon Cooks. So maybe the Texans know they don't have a whole lot going for him this year, and they look to trade Cooks, get some picks or something like that. And then Collins is the de facto wide receiver 1 for this team. So I like that call on your part. I like the talent of Nico Collins.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks has been traded so many different times. And whether or not he gets traded or not is still in question because, I mean, the Texans could maybe have some dead cap if they were to trade him before June 1st, $7.5 million. If he released him after June 1st, it'd be 2.5 million dead cap this season and 5 million dead cap next season. Trading wise and release wise, the same way.
So yeah, maybe. I mean, that feels like when he normally gets traded is after June 1st.
Yeah, clearly. Quick question since we're on the trade topic. Amari Cooper, does he get traded or released?
I think he gets released. I think a lot of teams know that he's a candidate to get released, and that just makes him a little bit less likely to want to sell. But also, like, why would you sell and take on this contract when he could get released and you sign him to your own terms? So I also think he might be pushing to get released because then he gets to pick where he plays. So that seems to be my thinking. And this is another lesson in why you don't give a contract that has 30 million in dead cap to a running back, because I bet you right now everyone in Dallas is wishing they could keep Cooper and move on from Zeke.
Yes, or get rid of Zeke and just have Pollard. Pollard been amazing. I would have enjoyed Pollard over Zeke.
Yep. He's better at this point in their career.
100% better. Do you have any wide receivers in mind? I have one more that I can mention after yours.
I have one, and I have a quick honorable mention as well. We all know who the big name second year receivers are, but I think one that might get overlooked a little bit is Elijah Moore.
Oh,
All summer long last year, you couldn't go on Twitter without seeing Elijah Moore hype. And it wasn't just the fantasy community, it was coming from Jets camp every single day. But that he got off to a slow start. I'm willing to give him a pass there. Rookie wide receiver playing with a rookie quarterback. I don't expect them to hit the ground running. But he had a stretch in the latter part of the season before he got banged up, where he was going off. I mean, in 6 of his final 7 games, he scored double-digit fantasy points. He had over 9 points in that other game where he didn't, and he had 6 touchdowns in that span. And to me, it's not a coincidence that he really caught fire once he was getting more regular playing time and more regular targets. And he did this. He had multiple he averaged over 20 fantasy points per game in the final 4 games before he got hurt. And he was doing this with a revolving door of quarterbacks that ranged from bad to meh. Like it
yep.
was Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Mike White, and Josh Johnson, who bounced around from league to league to league to team to team to team. And this guy was still productive. I think we saw the breakout happening, but then he got hurt and we didn't really see a whole lot of him. So people kind of forget about that. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown is getting all of this hype, and what he did at the end of the year was amazing. Elijah Moore had a similar stretch in the middle of the year, but because it wasn't at the end of the year, no one's really talking that much about him. So I really like Elijah Moore there. And then my honorable mention is Kadarius Toney.
Oh,
First round pick last year. Is that yours?
no, not at all.
Oh, you're out on Toney?
I'm out. I mean, yesterday during the show with Emily and Keith, we all ranked him as the good, the bad, the ugly, and we ranked him as the rookie wide receiver in the ugly category.
I get it. Look, he didn't do a whole lot last year, but I keep going back to that one game where they were banged up, mightily missing a lot of pieces. He had 10 catches and nearly 200 yards against the number 1 ranked Cowboys defense. And my thing about Toney is he's super explosive. We all know that. I think he's a better route runner than he got credit for coming out of college. And the thing is, last year down the stretch, when Daniel Jones was out, I mean, Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm were having a battle of who could be more awful. Joe Judge was calling terrible plays. I mean, they ran a quarterback sneak on 3rd and 9 from the 1. Like that's going to be what Joe Judge is remembered for. I think Brian Dable is otherworldly better than what they had last year. And whether it's Daniel Jones or Trubisky or whoever throwing the ball, I think Toney's going to get a lot of volume. And I think they're just going to use him and utilize his skill set better than he was last season.
Here's the question, though. Are you concerned with his injury risk?
Yes, but the thing is, he goes late, at least in the early drafts I've done, he goes late enough where I don't really care. Like when I'm drafting my wide receiver 4 or 5, I'm cool taking a risk on a guy who missed some time due to injury.
Okay, it'll be intriguing. I'm not so much buying Toney. He's definitely at an all-time low. He's definitely at an all-time low. You could definitely get him really cheap, but it is the Giants.
It is I'm curious to see now who you're. When I heard your reaction, I thought maybe we had the same guy here, but I'm curious to see now who your second one is.
So my second one is with a scenario on whether or not a wide receiver gets traded, because there was a lot of talks with the wide receiver getting traded, aka rumors with Tyler Lockett. So if Tyler Lockett or even DK Metcalf, which I highly doubt DK gets traded, if Lockett gets traded, there's one guy in mind that can take that number 2 spot. He was a 2nd-round draft pick, and he had 3+ targets in the last 3 of the 4 games, and that's Dwayne Eskridge. I think Dwayne, he really showed some kind of flashes towards the end of the season, and I think he has potential. Now, whether or not he progresses with Lockett and DK there, no, I don't expect that, but Dwayne does show flashes, and he also missed some time with injury. I don't know if he's going to be that guy, but if Lockett gets traded, I think Eskridge can really be that second man.
So who knows what's going to happen with free agency and the draft and all that. But if one of those 2 Seattle wide receivers are traded, are you taking him over Kadarius Toney?
You really put me on that one. Oof.
I was gonna say friendly bet. I'll
Friendly
take the
bet.
side of Tony.
I'll take Eskridge. I'll take Eskridge on that. I
Let's
would rather take Eskridge.
let's see. Well, I'm excited for this now. Now I have reason to be invested in Eskridge and Tony.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Eskridge will be a breakout if Lockett leaves. Maybe he's my breakout player of the year.
I think it's a bold call. I like it.
Just like Davis Mills.
There
Being
we
bold
go.
here. Being bold here. Hey, maybe we got a bet on T Law and Davis. Who finishes better?
I'll take T Law on that
Of
one.
course you will.
You're going Davis Mills?
Of course.
All right, we got two friendly bets here now.
This is depending on whether or not T Law can actually get weapons. If T Law gets weapons, T Law takes it.
I'll go T Law either way, but I do agree.
Okay. Maybe we'll have to see. So it'll be intriguing. Nico Collins, Dwayne Eskridge for me. I don't know. I like them too. I really like them too. So moving on to our last bit, it's tight ends. Boy, we both know tight ends in fantasy. They're just terrible sometimes. And you have some flashes, maybe like a Robert Tonyan, and then all of a sudden next season, drafted so high and he gets injured. And now we're back to the drawing board. So second year tight ends, we know rookie tight ends are really hard to progress in their first year, sometimes even second and third. It really takes till the fourth year. But if we were to have any tight end in the second year to break out, besides Pitts and Pat Fryermuth, maybe you have Pat Fryermuth, but I really think he broke out last year, finishing tight end 13. Who is your next guy?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here because I was gonna
No.
talk about one of the two you told me I couldn't talk about.
Okay. I'll start with mine then.
Okay.
I'll start with mine. This guy played 17 games. Obviously, they no longer have a quarterback, and that's Kylan Granson. Kylan Granson, 15 targets, 11 receptions, 106 yards. Showed a couple flashes here and there, averaged about 9.64 yards a catch. But Mo Alley Cox, free agent. Jack Doyle, retired. So he has everything in his favor to really go his way. And I'd love to see him really break out. He was my guy in Devy leagues. He was my guy in Dynasty leagues. I was drafting in the 4th, 5th round because he has potential and he can just sit on your taxi.
I like that call a lot. You're going there with bolder calls. I thought of someone. I thought you were gonna take him. The only thing on your guy, I've been pushing for the Colts. Well, before they traded Carson Wentz, but I've been pushing for them to sign a tight end, someone like Evan Ingram or someone like that, because I think it could be a big piece of that offense. But I like your call. I'll go with Brevin Jordan here because I as much as we kind of disagreed a little bit on Davis Mills, I think he is a capable real life quarterback. And then we were saying earlier, after Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins, it really dries up quickly in terms of targets. Jordan showed potential last year. He's a good athlete. He flashed a bit. And then if he's just getting volume now, and I think he could especially be a factor in the red zone. Like Brandon Cooks isn't a great red zone threat. Nico Collins and Jordan, now those are the two guys who you could throw the ball to in the red zone. So I'll go with him, although I was all set to talk about the breakout that is going to be Kyle Pitts next season.
I'm sorry. Wait, hold on. Did he not break out though this season?
If you ask anyone who drafted Kyle Pitts, they would say no.
Really?
And they would be wrong.
Really? I actually was low on him. I didn't think he was going to do this great that he did in his first season, but he finished tight end 6 though. You expected higher?
I mean, he was going off the board in a lot of drafts as the 4th tight end. And I don't even think it's that. I think it's that a lot of people thought like, hey, this is the next Pitts. This is the next Kelsey and the next Kittle and Waller and like Andrews. And he was clearly in another tier below those guys, I think. But he didn't live up to our massive expectations. He lived up, though, to the Falcons' expectations because when they drafted him, they were like, this is going to be the best rookie tight end in quite some time. And he was. And the biggest thing, he was tight end 6 overall, 11 in points per game. And I think that is where some people hold their hat on. Like, I thought this guy would be a lot better than the tight end 11. The only other players besides Kyle Pitts to have over 100 targets and 1 touchdown or fewer were Cole Beasley and Laviska Shenault Jr. So I think Kyle Pitts, who's a unicorn for a reason and built like a house. I think he'll get some touchdown regression. And the average touchdown rate for people with 100 or more targets last year was 6 touchdowns. I think Kyle Pitts, if things go right, could have double digits. So for me, I think Kyle Pitts is very much so in play to finish as the tight end 1 next year, and I would take him as a top 3 tight end. I would take him ahead of Darren Waller. I would take him ahead of George Kittle. And to some, that might seem spicy, but I am here for the Kyle Pitts breakout. The real breakout. Like his rookie year was a taste. I think year 2 on, Kyle Pitts is one of the very best tight ends in fantasy.
So who are you ranking ahead of him? I'm guessing Kelsey and Andrews.
As of right now, I have Andrews 1, Kelsey 2. That could change. Like depending on the moves Atlanta makes and those other teams make, that could change. But as of right now, he's my tight end 3. I strongly considered ranking him ahead of Kelsey, but I was like, I can't do that just yet.
Wow, that would be, you definitely have a lot of people in your comment section really talking about that one. But interesting. I don't really see him as a tight end. He has potential as a tight end 3, but man,
I think a lot of people are going to rank him 6th or 5th or 6th. Like I think the consensus 3 next year will be, or the, not consensus, but the overall 3 will be Andrews, Kelsey, Kittle. But I'll take Pitts over Kittle, and I think Waller versus Pitts is going to be a legit discussion too.
Yeah, and I'll take everyone over Kittle. I'm not a big fan of Kittle, no offense, but I've never been trustful of Kittle. So I'll take Pitts over Kittle. I'll take Pitts over Waller. I was really big Waller fan the year he was breaking out. I was really big on him. He ended up breaking out. I stuck with him for the next 2 years, but I don't know. I'm iffy on him with this season. He's already, I think, 30, if not maybe 31. He's definitely up there in age. So it'll be something to see, but interesting. Pitts, wide tight end 3. Brevin Jordan, though, I do like. I had him as an honorable mention. 9 games, 25 targets, 20 receptions, 178 yards, plus 3 touchdowns. Davis Mills, if he can step up like the way I was saying, I think Brevin Jordan and, like you said, Nico Collins can really be a big factor in that role.
I think you're a Texans fan this year.
Oof. No, thank you. No, thank you.
At least in fantasy.
I am a diehard Patriots fan, but if I were to pick a second team, it is the Jaguars. I've been a Jaguars fan since Leonard Fournette was drafted. Of course, Leonard Fournette didn't stay there, but hey, maybe the Jaguars can do something. But the Bills, I'd like to talk about a little bit about the Bills before we leave. Bills, does Gabe Davis, is he the wide receiver 2 there?
Unless they draft Jameson Williams. But even if they do, like, he won't be ready to start the year. Yes, I think Gabriel Davis is the wide receiver 2 here. Cole Beasley is already trying to get a trade. Isaiah McKenzie is a free agent. Emmanuel Sanders is a free agent. And here's the thing that annoyed me last year. Like, when they signed Emmanuel Sanders, I was like, yeah, this is going to hurt Gabriel Davis, but Gabriel Davis should still play over Emmanuel Sanders. And a lot of other people and a lot of Bills fans all thought that. And it didn't happen until the end. Like, that to me was the thing that annoyed me the most. And then you see it when they went to Gabriel Davis and they had another field stretcher outside of Stephon Diggs. The offense went to a new level. That's what John Brown always brought them, right? Like he wasn't great, but he was able to stretch the field for other receivers. So I think Emmanuel Sanders was too one-dimensional at this point in his career. He's a good veteran. I wish him the best. I enjoy watching him play. But I think Gabriel Davis has earned that number 2 spot, unless the only thing I could see them doing to really hurt Gabriel Davis is drafting Jameson Williams if he falls to 25, or if they sign Gronk, because then I think they'll go at a lot of 2 tight end sets.
Yeah, I was hearing a lot of people not really high on Knox, which was interesting to me, because I'm really high on Knox.
Knox is a good. Knox isn't a Gronk level player, but Knox is a good player. Knox has blemishes though, like he doesn't always have the most reliable hands, and sometimes that comes out in the worst scenarios. But Knox is he's a good athlete. He's a good red zone presence. I necessarily don't think they need to upgrade the tight end position, but if you could get Gronk and what he brings to the offense and the Buffalo native and all of that stuff, I get it.
Do you think they go for a free agent wide receiver, maybe like Allen Robinson, a veteran?
No, I don't think they're going to spend up on a wide receiver. If they sign anyone, I think it'll be something similar to what they did last year with like Emmanuel Sanders, get a veteran on a cheap deal to be some depth. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought back Isaiah McKenzie and let Cole Beasley
Yeah.
walk, but I they don't have a ton of cap to begin with. I think they view more the offensive line and the defense is where they need to shore up, and then maybe if a talent like a Jamison Williams, who was projected to be like top 10 or 15, if he falls to 25, then I think maybe they consider it and they're like, hey, we just got our 1-2 punch now for the next 1-2-3. You could even say for the next 5 years.
1, 2, 3, 4 with Knox there too.
Yeah.
And do you think at 25, do you think there's a chance that maybe they draft a running back?
No. I think this is a team that has never, being at least the GM, has never shown that he would pay up for a running back in the draft. Day 2, like round 3 or 4 seems to be where they like to. That's where they got Devin Singletary. That's where they got Zach Moss. I also wouldn't be surprised though if they signed a running back, a veteran running back that goes for cheap. I don't know if that's like necessarily like a James Conner or Leonard Fournette or Melvin Gordon, but maybe the secondary tier of running backs that are available on free agency. I could see them doing that, but I don't think they're going to invest a lot of money or draft capital into that position.
Maybe they even draft maybe like a Jason Cook, brother of Dalvin Cook.
Hey, if he's going in round 3 or later, I'm cool with that.
I think that would be huge for the Bills. Definitely for sure. But that's gonna.
You heard it here first. 2022 Super Bowl champion Buffalo Bills,
or 2022 Super Bowl champion New England Patriots.
It's gonna be a Bills year. Josh Allen's gonna win the MVP. The Bills are gonna win the Super Bowl. It's gonna be a fun year for Buffalo. I'm sorry.
Or they just end up losing again to the Chiefs.
The good thing for the Bills is that the road for the AFC, we all know how tough it is, but the path for the Bills getting the 1 seed gets easier because the AFC West teams are just going to be beating each other up.
That is very true. That is definitely going to be the hardest division. Both Wests.
Both West, and I would say the second hardest is the AFC North, which means you're going to have the maybe the Steelers, Ravens, Bengals all beating each other up. No offense to your Patriots. Outside of them, it gets pretty easy in the AFC East.
Listen, we're going to get some defensive weapons, offensive weapons, bring in Bobby Wagner. Would love to see that. So it'll be intriguing to see. Maybe we'll have another friendly bet. Who goes farther, Bills or Patriots in the playoffs? I
will take that bet right now.
All right, here we go. You guys heard it here first. Once again, my name is Fernando. I am your host of Sports Time HQ. Joined with me today is Michael F. Florio. Make sure to go follow him all over social media. And that will do it for this week's show of second-year breakout players. And once again, make sure to come back on Saturday where we will have, at 3 p.m. Eastern, Marcus Grant.